In the early decades of the 20th century, Japan was changing faster than any other nation in Asia. Within a generation, it had evolved from a feudal island society into a modern industrial state, with ambitions that reached far beyond its shores. Factories roared, shipyards worked day and night, and steel, once imported, now poured from Japanese furnaces by the ton. At first, this transformation was a story of national pride and resilience. But in time, it became something else, a story of momentum that even its own leaders could not stop. The foundations of ambition. The roots of Japan's military rise stretch back to the late 1800s. After centuries of isolation, the Meiji Restoration opened the country to rapid modernization. Industrialists, engineers, and military advisors from Europe helped design railways, shipyards, and arsenals. A new generation of officers studied in Berlin and London, learning modern tactics and engineering. The message was simple. Survival depended on strength. Surrounded by colonial empires, Japan saw industrial power as the only path to sovereignty. By the 1920s, its economy was expanding, its shipyards rivaled those of the West, and its navy ranked among the world's largest. But prosperity carried a price. Japan depended heavily on imported fuel, iron, and food. Each boom year deepened that dependence, and the Army's planners warned that self-sufficiency was impossible without securing new territories. Industrial ambition was quietly merging with military logic. The Manchurian Turn. In 1931, this logic found its outlet in Manchuria. Japanese officers staged an incident along a railway and used it to justify the occupation of a vast, resource-rich region in northeast China. Factories followed soldiers, and in just a few years, mines, steel mills, and power plants transformed the region into an industrial colony. At home, newspapers praised the victory, the economy surged. But with each success, civilian oversight weakened. The Army had learned a dangerous lesson, that swift action brought results while politics only slowed progress. Through the 1930s, Japan's military influence grew until it overshadowed the civilian government entirely. Cabinet ministers came and went. Generals and admirals stayed. Tokyo's leaders no longer debated whether to expand, only how far. Industrial capacity became both sword and fuel, feeding the army that demanded more of it. Industry becomes strategy. Japan's transformation into a military power was remarkable. Its aircraft industry, once reliant on foreign blueprints, began producing advanced fighters and bombers. Shipyards launched carriers that rivaled Britain's and the United States. Heavy industry merged with national policy. The steel mills of Kobe, the shipyards of Kure, and the aircraft plants of Nagoya were all coordinated to supply the imperial forces. This integration created efficiency and dependency. Each factory was linked to military orders, each worker to the rhythm of mobilization. By 1940, Japan's economy was militarized in all but name. The same industrial base that had lifted the nation from isolation now bound it to the machinery of expansion. Oil imports from the United States and the Dutch East Indies sustained this growth. But when diplomacy faltered and embargoes tightened, a grim calculation emerged. Without access to those resources, the entire system would collapse within months. The logic of production pushed the country toward risk. A war for resources began to look like a war for survival. The Pacific Gamble. When Japan advanced southward in 1941, seizing territories across Southeast Asia and the Pacific, its leaders believed they were buying time, perhaps 2 years of secure access to oil and minerals before the industrial giants of the West could recover and respond. The early victories were sweeping. Naval power, long the pride of the empire, achieved its greatest reach. From the Indian Ocean to the edge of the Central Pacific, Japan controlled an empire that spanned millions of square miles. Factories back home raced to keep up, converting civilian production to support an unprecedented logistical network of bases, airfields, and fleets. But every mile of conquest added new burdens. Transport ships burned the very fuel they were meant to deliver. Repair yards could not keep pace with the losses. The empire's industrial core had become a fragile web stretched across oceans. Behind impressive headlines, shortages of oil and steel were already shaping the future. Overextension and strain. By 1943, the arithmetic of war began to turn against Japan. Industrial output peaked and then plateaued, unable to match the combined capacity of the nations opposing it. American shipyards were producing new carriers faster than Japan could repair damaged ones. Allied submarine warfare cut deep into supply lines, while air raids began targeting key industrial centers at home. The same factories that had once symbolized national strength now stood exposed. In response, Japan reorganized its economy for total war. Rationing became routine, civilian industries were redirected to arms production, and research into new weapons intensified. Yet resources could not be conjured from empty tanks. Coal and oil shortages forced compromises. Aircraft built with lighter alloys, ships launched without adequate armor, and reduced training hours for pilots and crews. The decline was gradual but irreversible. The machinery of empire was consuming itself. The limits of control. Even as material conditions worsened, industrial discipline held. Managers and engineers worked under extreme pressure to sustain production. New factories moved underground to evade bombs, and workers labored through blackouts to keep assembly lines moving. The war machine still functioned, but direction had blurred. Strategic priorities changed faster than industry could adjust. By the time new designs reached mass production, the battlefield had already moved on. Communication between frontline commands and industrial planners grew erratic. Supply convoys launched late or never arrived. Weapons designed for earlier phases of the war no longer matched the realities of defense. What had begun as coordination between factory and fleet now became a scramble to keep up with events. In practical terms, Japan's war economy was no longer directed. It was reacting. The turning point in the sky. Industrial decline alone did not end Japan's expansion. Air power sealed its fate. By 1944, sustained bombing campaigns reached the home islands, striking factories, ports, and power plants. Despite heroic efforts to disperse production, key bottlenecks could not be hidden. The loss of a single steel mill or refinery could ripple across the entire defense network. Infrastructure built over decades was undone in months. Technological innovation remained impressive. Jet prototypes, advanced torpedoes, and radar systems were under development. But without resources and time, they remained prototypes. The balance had shifted from invention to survival. Production goals became symbolic. Industrial reality dictated surrender. The once proud war machine had grown beyond control, and its own complexity now accelerated its decline. Collapse and reckoning. By mid-1945, Japan's capacity to wage modern war was largely gone. Shipyards were silent, railways crippled, and cities struggling to recover from continuous raids. Oil reserves were nearly exhausted. Aircraft could fly but not train. Even communications faltered as power grids failed. The empire that had expanded through industrial might now face the limits of that same system. When peace came, the scale of transformation that followed was as dramatic as the rise that preceded it. Under post-war reforms, heavy industry was dismantled, military production banned, and the factories that once built warships began producing cars, tools, and electronics. The energy that had once fueled conflict was redirected toward reconstruction. Japan's industrial spirit never disappeared. It changed direction. Lessons of the machine. The story of Japan's war machine is not only about destruction, it is about the tension between innovation and control. Industrial progress gave Japan strength, but also created pressures its leaders could not manage. Once every institution became tied to military output, restraint became impossible. Each new success justified the next risk, until the system collapsed under its own momentum. For historians and strategists, the lesson endures. Economic growth can empower nations, but when it fuses with unchecked militarization, it generates forces that even governments cannot easily reverse. The machinery of progress, once set on that path, demands constant fuel. Resources, victories, expansion. And when those run out, collapse follows not from defeat alone, but from exhaustion, the modern legacy. Today, Japan stands among the world's leading industrial powers once again, but the foundations rest on different principles: peace, technology, and cooperation. The industries that once built carriers now build bullet trains. The shipyards that launched fleets now export precision engineering. This transformation did not erase history, it redefined it. Japan's post-war rise demonstrates that industrial strength does not have to serve conquest. It can serve resilience and reconstruction instead. In that sense, the fall of imperial power was not only an ending, but a rebirth. The war machine that could not be controlled left behind lessons that continue to shape the modern world. That technology without restraint invites disaster. That economic power must answer to civilian governance, and that no nation, however advanced, is immune to the consequences of its own creation.